I'm Arnold Beasold, and I guess my grandpa started this store in September 13th of 1880.
Take a drive down the winding back roads of California, Kentucky, and you just might find a hidden gem in the Frank Beasold General Merchandise Store. Located on the banks of 12 Mile Creek on Fisher Road, the store was a one-stop shop for the early settlers of Campbell County, Kentucky. With an over 100-year history, the walls whisper many stories, none more intriguing than that of Franz Michael Beasold, the original immigrant and patriarch of the Beasold family, and his son, Frank Xavier, who founded the store in 1890. Franz Michael was born in Westernhausen, Germany on October 5, 1818 to a linen weaver father, and grew up no doubt hearing about the great success of early settlers to the United States. In the spring of 1846, Franz purchased a ticket for approximately $16 for passage to America on a ship from Germany to Baltimore, Maryland. He arrived in Baltimore on June 12, 1846, and made his way to Newport, Kentucky by 1847. 4 months after his arrival, he married his first wife, Walburger Veit, on October 25, 1846, at Old St. Mary's Church in Cincinnati, Ohio. They had their only child, Bernard, in August of the following year. Walburger died suddenly in 1849 during the Cincinnati cholera epidemic, leaving Franz to care for their young son alone. Now a widower and single parent, he needed a new wife and companion to share his responsibility. He found one in Elizabetha Chalk Sextetter, a French immigrant and widow who had lost her husband in the very same epidemic that had killed Walburger. Frank adopted her son, toddler Peter Saxtetter Jr., and along with Bernard, they had 6 more children.
From then on, he was a farmer and a stonemason is what he was, and he settled just right behind where St. Peter and Paul's School and church is at now. So he built the first church in 1853. He laid the foundation, and most probably he was involved in laying the logs also, you know.
Franz's oldest son, Frank Xavier Beasold, was born on October 5, 1850. Growing up, he worked with his father to learn the farming and stonemason trades. Frank married Victoria Schmidt on September 21, 1880 at St. Peter and Paul Church. Between the years of 1881 and 1895, they had 10 children, 8 boys and 2 girls. Frank also played the fiddle, and his band provided entertainment at local picnics and events. Wanting to provide a prosperous life for his family, Frank Xavier began looking for a business opportunity in the area.
You know, and then Grandpa saw this building, or the building that was built, that Reckonar built, and he had in mind maybe starting a store himself. So Grandpa kept working, and he knew about this building, and so Grandpa, he would walk to Persimmon Grove during the week, and on Saturdays then he would take a horse and wagon up there for these people on 12 Mile Creek, and they were called Creek people. And he would haul groceries back to them on Saturday and deliver them, and then he would take their order then for the next week, see? And he would take that, well, he left it at home, I guess, and then on Saturday morning he took the horse and wagon back up, and he brought their merchandise back home. And so then the Creek people approached him one day and said to him, Frank, instead of you hauling this back and forth, why don't you start a store on 12 Mile Creek? And Grandpa says, well, he knew about the building already, but he didn't have no money. Find out. And so he approached that Mr. Wheeler and said that the people on 12 Mile Creek, the Creek people, are talking about starting a store, you know. And finally he said, well, Frank, why don't you start a store? He says, well, I want to, but he says, I ain't got no money. So Mr. Wheeler then says, well, Frank, you ain't got no money? He says, I'll give you the money to start a store, and that's what Grandpa wanted to hear.
Frank rented the building at a rate of $40 every 6 months and officially opened the Frank Beasold General Merchandise Store on September 13, 1880. The original ledger from that first day of business reveals that the first sale was for sugar, tax, and matches for a grand total of 32 cents.
First, when he started, he didn't have that much money, he would borrow the horse from his father, and then he would ride the horse to his father-in-law, Schmidt, and get his wagon. That was on Monday, and he would bring it back here, and then he would take the merchandise that the farmers brought in. They brought in butter, chickens, and eggs, and all of this then he hauled in his wagon, and then he delivered it like from Fort Thomas on down. And it took Grandpa from 4 o'clock in the morning that he left here to 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get to Newport. All right, 12 hours. And then Grandpa done shopping in the Mama Street in Newport, and he was tired from going, and he didn't go no further. So then he gave his order to this J.R. Powell, and J.R. Powell had a warehouse in Newport like, and he had some merchandise in there that Grandpa wanted. And this was at night, and they had his wagon loaded up for him. They had his horses cleaned up, and his horses hitched to the wagon at 4 o'clock in the morning down there, and then it would take him more than 12 hours to get back home because he had a full load. And Beazold Road, starting right here at the store, ran for about 1.5 miles, and it was an unpaved road, no rocks, nothing but dirt. So in the spring of the year, it was muddy. So them horses were tired about 1.5 miles from here. They had another team that they hitched up and drove that team up there, so they had 4 horses to pull the wagon back home. See, and maybe he got home at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock that night instead of 4 o'clock.
Frank continued to rent the store for 3 years, then purchased the store in August of 1883, along with 62 acres for $1,126.08. Frank began laying the foundation for the new store in 1895, which still stands today. Frank Xavier eventually changed the name of the store to Frank Beazold & Son and ran the shop with his son Dominic. When Dominic retired, the store passed to his brother, Frank Xavier's youngest son, Frank Michael Beazold, named after his grandfather. Frank Michael then passed it to his son, Arnold, and told him in 1968 to close the store on its 100th anniversary.
And so I kept it till April 25th, 1981. So it was here 100 years and 6 months is what it was. So Dad was pretty well right, you know. Inside the store are antique scales, a wooden mail sorting box, new shoes still in their boxes from the early 1900s, and a cashier's window for when the store served as a U.S. post office. Today, Arnold runs a beekeeping business in the shadow of the old general store. He continues his family legacy of cottage industry in California, Kentucky, selling his honey to county market in southern states. So that's the end of that.
Since 1880. Wow, that was a long time ago. But how come it looks so new?